Hello and welcome to Pickleball Therapy, the podcast dedicated to your pickleball improvement. Hope you're having a great week. This week we're going to be chatting about two different subjects. We're going back to the regular format this week. We're going to be going over a big subject. We're talking about slowing the game down. And there's two components to this. It's not simply slowing the ball down. There's another piece we're going to be talking about slowing the game down. And if you can slow it down, you'll play better pickleball. And then in the riff, got a question from our friend Bob. Asked a question about a specific shot that he was dealing with. Had to do with low shot to the backhand on the backhand transition zone shot and some difficulty there. So I wanted to address that and give you some general thoughts on how to deal with those types of situations when you're out there on the court. Let's jump into the podcast. You'd like to help your friend or family member learn how to play pickleball, but how? Now it's easy. Pick up a copy of Play Pickleball, a beginner's guide. It's the most complete guide to playing pickleball. Available as a digital download or in hard copy at intopickle.com or at Amazon. Let's keep growing the sport. Let's talk a little bit about slowing the game down. What is it we're talking about when we talk about slowing the game down? Now, there's a couple of different ways that you can think about slowing the game down. One way to think about it is slowing the actual action down. In other words, the ball. So, when you're playing in a situation where just things are getting out of whack, balls are starting to fly all over the place, you're dealing with some bangers, maybe there's a firefight going on by the NVZ and you're not in a good position, you learn how to slow the game down. We call it the soft game, right? So it's resetting. It's basically controlling tempo. So what you're doing is you're dictating at what tempo do you want to play the game. That's an important skill to learn. If you learn how to slow the game down, if you learn how to control the tempo of the game, that'll give you a tremendous amount of confidence and just calm when you're out there, because you know that no matter what your opponents decide to do, what they bring to the table, if you will, you have an answer for it if you want to change the tempo of the game and slow things down. Particularly helpful when you're playing against bangers, because as we know, bangers are going to do what? Bangers are going to bang. And you can't control them. You can't stop a banger from banging. They're entitled to play the game the way they choose to play it. What you can do is you can learn how to slow the game down, how to play the soft game. And when you learn how to play the soft game, what you do now is you're able to take the weapon out of the banger's hand. You're able to take away their gun or their knife or whatever it is that you like to think about. Whatever weapon that they're using against you, you're able to take it out of their hands by using this technique. But there's an aspect of the game that where you can apply this slow or soft or slow game, I should say, slow game approach or slow game thinking, which is the mental part of the game. And what happens a lot of times when we're out there playing is the game gets fast, right? Everything seems like it's going 1,000 miles an hour, and we just gotta go, or else we're gonna miss the shot, or we're gonna miss the ball, or miss the action, or whatever. And that causes a lot of errors in our games, whether it's rushing forward with our bodies to hit the ball, whether it's hitting the ball too early, getting an angle on the shot that we don't want, and things like that. A lot of times that happens simply because we are rushing. Now, we are playing the game too fast, and so if you can learn how to control the tempo at which you play the game. So this is different than the tempo at which the game is being played, because you can play slow. You being your person or yourself as a player, you can play slowly, but play a fast game. In other words, play a hard, aggressive game, under control and slow. Likewise, you can also play like a soft game technically, meaning you're hitting soft shots, but you're rushing. So we're talking about you as a player slowing yourself down. And that's going to give you a ton of benefit if you can learn how to slow yourself down. So let me give you a few techniques that you can use to help you slow yourself down. The first thing is try to control your tempo even before you start playing. Think about it, think about it this way. Once you're out there and things go live, right? So the ball's in play. It is much harder to try and gain control of your tempo of yourself from that point forward. What's easier is to put on a podcast on the way to the courts, give yourself some time to reflect and relax and take some breathe as you're going out there. Another thing that you can do is be very intentional when you arrive at the courts. do a little warm up. It's good for your body, but it's not just good for your body. It's good for your mind, right? What's going to happen is invariably what happens. You get to the courts and your friends are out there and they're clamoring. They're like, hey, fill in your name. Glad you're here. Let's go. Court 2, go play. And you need to be able to say to them, I'll be there in a minute. I need to stretch for a second. And so you then take control of yourself and you're able to control the tempo at which, not just you're playing, at which you're approaching the game from the get. Another thing you can do is don't rush your serve. Now, I know that in rec play you can't take as much time as you might have available under the rules or as much time as you might take in a tournament because it's a different type of a game. But I will say that the vast majority of players who I see out there are serving too fast. And in fact, not only is it making you play quicker than you should, right, at a faster pace than you probably should for your mind, it's also causing service errors for you. So there's a double whammy there from going too fast when you're serving. So give yourself a little bit of time when you serve. Bounce the ball once, maybe twice. Just kind of take a little respite between serves before you start the rally. Another thing you can do is you can work on some breathing techniques. There's a breathing technique that CJ is particularly fond of, which I think works very well as well, which is you breathe in once and then you breathe out twice. So it's 1 breath in, 2 breaths out. It's kind of like a push out. It's similar to what they use in Lamaze technique, I believe. But basically the idea is you breathe in once, push out twice, and that'll really relax your shoulders, relax your body. There's other breathing techniques as well that you can research. Spend a little time on YouTube or in Google and find some breathing techniques that will help you control yourself, or control your not yourself, but control your tempo, control your rate, if you will, your not just your heart rate, but just your overall body rate as you're playing. Another tip that can help you is to focus on one thing at a time. So when you're out there, rather than worrying about every little thing that's going on, because that's going to just crowd the mind, right? And that's going to give you some anxiety. Focus on a single item or 1 or 2 items. So something like, I'm going to hit the ball over the net. That's my focus. And so you're really your mind is so focused on that one thing that you become like laser focused, if you will. Then everything else becomes like just, remember the old Charlie Brown cartoons. It's like, roar, 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 roar. You don't even hear or see or really think of anything else except the one thing you're focused on. That's a really good technique for also slowing yourself down when you're out there. And lastly, when you're not playing, spend some time on your mental game. If you're listening to this podcast, I commend you. I appreciate the fact that you're listening to the podcast, and that's great. But I commend you for doing it for yourself, because this type of thinking, this type of just reflecting on things can really help you get control of yourself and the process by which you play pickleball. Also recommend that you read some books. If you go to WeArePickleball.com/resources, we have several books in there that CJ and I have both read and like that will help you on the mental side of the game. As a friend of ours, Dr. Kays likes to say, if you work on your game, if you're spending hours working on or maybe not hours, but however long you're spending working on your serve, working on your third shots, whatever it is you're working on, right? Well, how about spending some time working on your mental part of the game? You can't expect that you don't do anything for the mental side of your game, and then all of a sudden you go out there and you perform wonderfully on the mental side of the game. It doesn't work that way. The same way you wouldn't expect your dinks or your volleys to improve if you don't practice them. Your mind also will not improve if you don't give it something to practice and something to work on. So highly recommend that you check those books out. And you can also get them on Audible. There's really kind of no excuse, right? You get it on Audible, then you take a 20 or 30 minute walk every day, throw it on there, listen and learn. And then when you're on the way to the courts, listen to one of the books, listen to this podcast, do something like that to help you calm the mind before, and this is the key, before you step out on the court. As you practice it, you'll get better and better, and you'll be much calmer, and the game will become much, much slower. I'll tell you this, when you're hitting those balls, you think you have about a second to hit the ball. I always tell students we're working on, I'm like, you got an hour and a half to hit the ball. Now, obviously, it's not an hour and a half, but you have a lot longer than you think you do when you're out there to be able to hit that ball the way you want. All right, so work on slowing that game down and see what happens there. In the riff, we're going to be talking about something a little bit different, but it's actually a corollary, I guess, because we're talking about, finding answers, right? Finding answers to questions. When things are going not the way you want on the court, how to find the answer to that question and solve the puzzle. And we're going to help you identifying what it is to ask the right question. Stay tuned for the riff. Most pickleball players spend a lot of time thinking about and comparing pickleball paddles. But you know what's more important than a pickleball paddle? Your shoes. Are you wearing the right kind of shoes to play pickleball in? If you're not sure, consider trying out shoes that are designed and made specifically for pickleball. Tie roll shoes are the shoes that CJ and I both wear out on the pickleball court. Remove any doubt about whether the shoes you're wearing are right for pickleball. Check out Tie roll shoes. I'll put a link in the show notes. Protect your most valuable asset out there, your body, with the right shoes. Wear the right shoes and play longer on the court. When we're out on the court playing pickleball, we're often looking for answers. We missed this shot, or we popped the ball up here, or it seems like we can't do something right on this area, whatever it is, right? So we're trying to find the answer. We're trying to solve the puzzle, if you will, and figure out, okay, how do I avoid from doing that next time? It's really a pain avoidance if you think about it, right? You pop the ball up, nobody likes that, and you or your partner got slammed. It's a little bit embarrassing. We say it's traumatic. It may not be traumatic for you, but it's certainly not something that you want, right? So you try and find the answer to it. But what I'm going to suggest to you is, finding answers is fine, but make sure that you're asking the right questions, right? And asking the right questions isn't simply framing it properly, right? It isn't simply framing the question properly to identify the particular thing you're trying to find out about. It's figuring out whether the question is a question that should be asked to begin with. I'll give you an example. You're playing a game and, there's a the players move, there's a ball that goes diagonal, super sharp, and then your partner moves over, and then you move over and you get beat to one side, right? You be beat on the counter diagonal shot, right? So the question is, well, should I have moved differently? Should I have covered that? Should I have done this? Should I have done that? I'm going to suggest to you that for the vast majority of players out there, the answer is don't ask the question, because it doesn't matter in that point. In other words, there's so many other things that can be our focus that are not the one shot that we lost there, or one rally that we lost there because of the winner shot. Really not going to help you out. And what happens is, it'll help you out eventually, right? So like when you later on, maybe further down your journey, once you solve the other parts of the puzzle and that's what's left, then ask that question. But when you're figuring out what questions to ask, right, try and ask questions that are bigger picture for you, right? That are going to be more relevant to where you are in the game and your improvement in the game, as opposed to trying to find the answer to every single possible thing that might happen on a pickleball court. Because what's going to happen is, one, you're not going to spend enough time on, or as much time as you probably should, on the more important things, right? Because now you're distracted by this other thing, as opposed to keeping your focus on the thing you need to be looking at. And then the other thing that can happen is the opposite of what we talked about earlier. Now things are speeding up. Now, instead of focusing on 2 or 3 things, or 1 or 2 things, even better, right? Now you're focusing on 72 things because you're worried about this shot, and then how come that ball was returned? Maybe I should have hit it over there, and then maybe I should have done this over there. And there's so many maybes when you're out there playing pickleball. You're gonna drive yourself mad. So when you're asking yourself a question, right? When you're trying to solve a puzzle out there, consider adding maybe a prior question, right? Almost like a test, right? As to whether the question should be allowed through the door. Is this a question that I should be asking myself? If the answer is no, forget about it. Move on, keep playing, and have a good time. Now, if it's a question that you should ask yourself, then proceed. And I'll give you an easy example. If you miss a return to serve, you need to ask questions. Okay, if you miss a return to serve, you need to ask yourself, was I standing in the right position? You need to kind of think about what happened, right? Did I hit the ball in the net? Did I hit it long? Did I hit it wide? Right? And so after you know that, then you can start going backwards and asking questions about, okay, where was I standing? Did I rush through the shot? What was my paddle angle? Did I run through the shot? All these different things that can help you then diagnose what it is that happened so that you can fix the problem. But the key here is first know that you're asking the right question. If you need help with, understanding these types of things, highly recommend that you check out the Pickleball system. It'll really help you, kind of flesh this part out of your understanding of the game. We'll have a new class starting in about a month or so definitely recommend you check that out. You can go to WeArePickleball.com and join the wait list for the Pickleball system. All right, so that's the podcast for this week. I hope you enjoyed it. If you're listening to it somewhere that has a rating system, we appreciate you giving it a rating. If you enjoyed the podcast, please share it with your friends. Remember, if you enjoyed the podcast, they probably will too. Have a great week, and we'll talk to you next time.